Well. Clemson Tiger fans, college football fans, welcome back to another episode of the All In Show right here on the Voice of College Football Clemson channel. Thank you so much for joining me. I am, as always, your host, Tiger Paul Craven. Got my boy Jordan Bowman in the back. He will be joining us momentarily. But before we get into that, if you are not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. It'll really help us out, helps us grow the channel. Also, don't forget to hit that like button. This is a live video, so the like button really helps us out on these live shows. Man, do we have a show for you guys tonight? It is rivalry week. It is hate week. It is Clemson versus South Carolina, the biggest rivalry if you grew up or live in the state of South Carolina, and it's not even close. Such a huge game, such a crazy long list or a long rivalry that we do have with the Gamecocks. Tons of history, tons of stuff to talk about, tons of trash talk here to be done. So without further ado, let's get into tonight's show. It is rivalry week. Let me bring on my co-host, Jordan Bowman. Jordan, how you doing tonight, man?
Good, man. I'm feeling good. I had Thanksgiving leftovers just a short while ago.
There you go.
So I'm in pretty good spirits, and this is my favorite time of the year, arguably. Rivalry week. This is the game that I'm always circling. Pretty much every Clemson fan is circling every single year on the calendar. This is the game that, if nothing else, you want to win this game, and it's a really interesting matchup in addition this year for a lot of reasons. Both teams coming off of, by their standards, disappointing, and by their expectations, disappointing seasons. But both have been playing well as of late. So I'm really excited, and obviously the intrigue is tenfold because of what happened last year. So I'm ready to get into it. I really just want this game to be played now, but. Yeah. Unfortunately, we have another 24 hours or so. Yeah. So, hey, that's part of rivalry week. It's the build-up, it's the excitement, the anticipation, all of that. So, I'm just happy that it's here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We are just over 24 hours to go until kickoff. That'll be 7:30 tomorrow night in Columbia, South Carolina, Willie Brice Stadium. The upside down cockroach, the stadium in the middle of the concrete jungle, all that good stuff, all that fun trash talk. But before we get into today's show, let's go ahead and shout out the comment section. Thank you guys for coming to hang out with us. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. I hope everybody got to spend time with friends and family, enjoy some good food, gain some perspective on what to be thankful for in your life. And all of those things. We got Alexander in here. Thank you for showing up. We got Droid132 in here. We got Tricksters in here. Thank you guys for already getting into the comment section. We got 14 people watching the live stream right now. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. Hit that like button if you have not already. And we are going to get into tonight's show. Jordan, as you kind of already started talking about this rivalry, if you grew up in the state of South Carolina, let's just talk about the rivalry for a second before we get into any sort of game talk or breakdown or predictions or what we think may or may not happen in the game. Just talking strictly from the history of the rivalry standpoint. If you were born in or grew up in or have spent any length of time in the state of South Carolina, you know how big this is. This means a ton in the state of South Carolina. It's bragging rights 365. It really is that big. And I know some of the national perspective on this rivalry is probably not quite as big as it feels when you do live in the state and grow up in the state of South Carolina. But to me, it's kind of comparable to, an Alabama-Auburn. And I know nationally that rivalry gets way more attention than the South Carolina-Clemson rivalry. But it's pretty similar if you think about it. They're two in-state teams, right, going against each other, basically a state that's divided. Excuse me. And they're two states that don't have any professional sports in them. You can say the Carolina Panthers, but they do not count. Nobody claims them as being from South Carolina. At least I do.
Some South Carolina residents try, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, so it's just a big rivalry. And I know you, having been a student and currently a grad student at Clemson and all that, I know you understand the rivalry very well. But just kind of your perspective growing up with this rivalry, what it kind of means to you.
Yeah. I mean, where to start? For those of you that don't know, I actually am from the state of North Carolina. Grew up just really right, like 10 minutes across the border. But always been a huge Clemson fan. I have a ton of family that have went to Clemson, were cheer for Clemson. And so, I grew up pretty entrenched in the rivalry. I mean, there were plenty of Gamecock fans that were around me, growing up. And so I had plenty of experience in the rivalry, and it really is just different. And, I've, of course, since my childhood, I've lived and gone to school in the state. And so I'm well aware of how entrenched this rivalry is within just the fabric of the state. And it really is. You mentioned Alabama, Auburn, and I think that's a great comparison. I think Ole Miss, Mississippi State is another similar one. Just they're two they're the two premier institutions within their state. They're the two premier sports products within their state because they don't have any professional sports, as Dabo mentioned in one of his press conferences earlier this week. It's like you have no choice but to be involved in some way or form or fashion when you are, when you live in this state. And it really is different. It really is different. I really can't put into words like how fierce it is. Like I would put it up against pretty much any other rivalry like you can name as far as the intensity. Maybe not the national relevance. Maybe not, these teams are not, both of these teams haven't been clashing for college football playoff appearances or anything like that. But the amount of sheer hatred and passion for this rivalry is I would say is unmatched. It's, as they say, we love to hate each other. Like that's one of the things that, both sides of the rivalry have said, man, we just love to hate each other. And it really is, one of those things where, you won't agree with pretty much anything else when it comes to talking to a South Carolina fan, but that's one thing that both sides of the rivalry can agree on is, this game, I know there have been talks about, this game potentially going away, but the institutions have no other intentions but to play this game. And I think that speaks to the intensity and importance that this game has within the state and the people that live in it. So it really is just I can't. There's nothing like it in any sport, really. I don't think I would put it up against anything.
Yeah, I mean it's absolutely huge, and for me growing up in the state of South Carolina, it was just literally like from birth. I was just born into kind of the rivalry, the Clemson side of things, obviously. And that's just the way it goes, man. You pick a side, whether you want to or not. You don't really have a choice. And I think that's a pretty unique thing. I don't think a lot of rivalries across the country have that. Certainly there's a few. But I think it's super unique. And it's such a, it's got such a long history. I think we got 119 meetings up to this point. Tomorrow will be the 120th time that the Gamecocks and the Tigers face off against each other, which is pretty crazy. Up until the COVID year, we had played every year since I don't even know, 1909 or something like that.
I think even earlier. It was like the second longest continuous rivalry in sports and in college football.
COVID unfortunately snapped that streak. So the 2020 season, you saw a break in it, but it's just it's a crazy rivalry. The I get hatred, the passion for these two fan bases runs pretty deep in this state, and it truly is about bragging rights for the next year, which Clemson knows all too well after dropping an inexplicable loss last season to the Gamecocks, which we'll get into a little bit of as much as me and you don't want to get into that game. We will talk about it just a bit here shortly. But, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the rivalry, what it means to us, man. I grew up a huge Clemson fan, so it means a ton to me. And I think it's one of those rivalries where, at least for me, like, I despise the South Carolina Gamecocks. I don't ever want to see them win a game ever. So it's not one of those ones where, like, oh, I just want to beat South Carolina, and if they do good, fine. No, I don't want to see them do good either, outside of Clemson either. So that's just one of those things. But let's get into the game a little bit. Everybody saw me flash up the series record up there. That's just to poke a little fun at the Gamecocks. 72-43-4 is the overall series record. Before last season, though, Jordan, since we must talk about it, Clemson was holding a 7-game winning streak against these very South Carolina Gamecocks. And they rolled into Death Valley, and they beat Clemson 31-30. They beat us by 1 point. A lot of inexplicable decisions in that game, not running the ball in the fourth quarter, in the second half, basically at all. The ring around a rosy kickoff deal that ended up in a fumble. I could go on and on, but let's go back to the 2022 matchup between these two teams. And are there any similarities to these teams? And if so, do you think any of it will translate to the game tomorrow?
In a lot of ways, no. I think there are some similarities, for both teams from last year, but I do think there's a lot different. I mean, I think the most glaring thing is, both teams have different offensive coordinators, different schemes, and they've shown different things offensively than they did last year. And the personnel wise, they're in a lot different space now. Obviously, Clemson has a completely different quarterback than the one that played in last year's matchup. And I think there's other position groups and staff changes that have happened between both teams here. But I think one thing that has been consistent is the South Carolina passing game and Spencer Rattler and Clemson's defense. I think both things that were. I mean, Clemson's defense was pretty good last year. I think they have taken some steps forward in that regard, and I think Spencer Rattler himself has taken steps forward as a passer in this game. So yeah, there are a lot of things that are the same, and a lot of things that are different between these two teams, and that's what makes it intriguing because you're really not sure what is going to show up, especially considering both teams are coming into this game off of 3-game winning streaks and starting to play some of their best ball. So, yeah, while we're going to think about last year's game and kind of how it played out, I do think there's a lot that has changed that's going to make this a little bit of a different dynamic. So, we'll see how it goes. You're muted.
Excuse me. Yeah. I think there are some similarities here. But I mean, really, these two teams have had, coming into this game. I mean, you mentioned it kind of in your little opening monologue you did there about these are two teams coming into the final game of the season, rivalry week. All that stuff's exciting to talk about. It matters. This is a 1-game season at this point. And, that stuff all is true specifically for rivalry week. But, I mean, honestly, these are two teams that have had very disappointing seasons based off of their preseason expectations that were set by the the fan base, by the media, by the team, whoever you're looking to set those expectations. These are two teams that have underachieved. I don't think any South Carolina fan thought they would be 5-6 heading into the Clemson game and needing a win against the Tigers to get bowl eligible. And I don't think any Clemson fan would have thought, we had 4 losses on the season and some of the turnover issues and all the crazy stuff that happened during Clemson season would be affecting this team right now. But really it is. So these are two teams that are, more so playing for, heart. They're playing for pride. They're playing for, the guy to their left and to their right. They're playing for their coaches, things like that, because these seasons haven't gone as planned. But, there is still a lot of juice in this game. One, because it's a rivalry game, but two, South Carolina is playing for their bowl eligibility. They lose this game, their season's over, completely done. Move on to spring, right? They don't get the extra bowl practices to work on things. They don't get any of that stuff. They just, the season ends tomorrow. So I think there's a lot of motivation there for the South Carolina Gamecocks. And, let's start getting into kind of the teams and stuff like that. Let's talk about the offensive side of the ball first. This South Carolina offense, they've struggled a bit this season. Their offensive line has been very, very underwhelming. I can think all the way back to week 1. I watched the South Carolina-North Carolina game, and I just remember watching time and time again Spencer Rattler back there looking like he was just fighting for his life. I mean, the dude was back there, and he played pretty well, actually. But he was under absolute duress all night. He was getting hit. He was getting hurried. He was having to run out of the pocket. Most of the plays that he made were completely improvised, broken plays, kind of like sandlot football, just drawing it up in the dirt. And let's just see what happens. He would snap the ball and pressure would be there, and he'd run around and try to find somebody. And that was essentially South Carolina's offense in the first game against North Carolina. Their offensive line hasn't really gotten much better this season. I think they've given up 39 sacks so far this season, which is, that's a big number. One of the big issues with the South Carolina offense, I think, is they only average 88 yards rushing this season, which, that doesn't bode well when you got, an offensive line that can't protect your quarterback in pass pro, right? So those are some of the issues that I think I see coming into this game for South Carolina. They are dealing with a few injuries on their offense. So what's kind of your thoughts on the South Carolina offense coming into this game? Clemson's defense is obviously riding a little bit high the past 3 games. We've gotten a lot of good play out of our secondary, specifically the young guys that have had to step up due to injury. Our defensive line has certainly started getting more pressure the second half of the season. So talk to me a little bit about the South Carolina offense, what you've kind of seen from them this season and what you expect from them heading into this game on Saturday.
Well, and I think you mentioned it. I think the biggest thing, the biggest glaring issues with the South Carolina offense has been the offensive line. They've had injuries at that spot. They had some in the preseason. They had some during the year, and they've really been playing with a lot of guys that just are not up to the standard. A lot of their veteran guys, some of the transfers they brought in didn't really pan out, and I think their best talent is on their line is their freshmen, and that's they've played well in spots when they've needed it, but it just they sometimes they look like freshmen, and when you don't have veteran leadership on that line, it makes it difficult, and so they haven't really been able to generate much continuity there, and I think that's where and I think this kind of goes into my next point. I have been impressed with the South Carolina offense in the sense of how they've still managed to be pretty competent in the passing game, despite not having a complementary run game. Although I think they have run the ball a little bit better in recent weeks. And I think that starts with Spencer Rattler. I think Dowell Loggins, their offensive coordinator, their new offensive coordinator, gets some credit too. But I think Spencer Rattler has played the best ball of his career this year. Unfortunately, the personnel limitations have made it so they haven't been as productive as maybe they had hoped. But I think Spencer Rattler, he has shown in multiple games this year that he's gonna make plays. I think back to the first half of that Georgia game where South Carolina was winning, and he was just he was just standing in the pocket, guys flying at him, tons of pressures allowed, and he was just, he's getting laid out and just delivering dime after dime after dime. And I think that was kind of the moment I was like, okay, wow, well, Clemson's still going to, this offense is still going to be a challenge for this Clemson defense, because I think Spencer Rattler is just playing really, really good football. And when he's at home, he's played his best ball. So I think that's what stands out. And obviously the emergence of Xavier Legette at wide receiver. He's been in that program a long time, hasn't had a ton of production. He'd be a receiver in spots, special teams guy. But he's really had a renaissance in his, I believe he's in his 5th year now. Kind of reminds me of Cornell Powell, but honestly, but probably better. He's been one of the best receivers in the country this year, statistically. And he poses a lot of matchup problems for this Clemson defense. So I think while they haven't been able to run the ball or protect Spencer Rattler, they still have been able to create, plays for Rattler and their receivers in the passing game. And I don't think they're as great at tight end as they were last year. They had Nate Adkins and Jaheim Bell and guys like that. But I think Trey Knox has he's played well in some spots, and I think he's a young player, but that's really talented, and he's a guy you have to watch out for as well. But again, the issues with this offense it's been tough when this team isn't generating the run game to really consistently put drives together. If Spencer Rattler isn't making an incredible throw, or Xavier Legette isn't just toasting somebody off the line, then it's tough for this team to really generate consistent offense. So that's one of the things that jumps out to me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Look, their offense is going to be limited, I think, coming into this game. I don't think it's particularly a good matchup for them. Just look, I know they have run the ball, a little bit better in the past 2 or 3 weeks. They've really started getting, a little bit more footing there. But they're going against a Clemson defense that has been pretty good against the run all season. Now, Clemson does have a habit of giving away big explosive run plays at points and times in games. But for the most part, they bottle up the run, which means that majority of this game, if South Carolina hopes to be successful and hopes to win this game, is going to be laid on Spencer Rattler's shoulders. And much like you, man, I've been super impressed with Spencer Rattler so far this year. That dude, for the issues that South Carolina has had along the offensive line and, skill positions, injuries, stuff like that, I think he's played about as well as you could hope that he could play if you're a South Carolina fan. And you mentioned Legette. It's really nice to just see a dude who just guts it out for a career, and then finally, it all just kind of comes together for him. I don't like him because of who he plays for, but it is a cool story to see. You do like to see people like that get rewarded for putting their head down, keeping their nose clean and just going to work. And they finally all came together for them. So you do love to see that. But, I do think the South Carolina coaching staff and the players, they got their work cut out for them this week. Yards are going to be hard to come by for this South Carolina offense. I don't think they're going to be able to hit very many explosive plays. If they do, they may pop a run a run or two here or there against Clemson, because that's kind of what Clemson does, right? They're really good at bottling up the run consistently, and then boom, somebody will pop a 30, 40, 50 yarder on them for no reason whatsoever.
Well, I will say this, and to your point about, I do think it's also important to, while Clemson has, in recent weeks given up some explosive runs, the running backs he were playing were pretty good. I mean, Amari Hampton is tied for, at North Carolina is tied for the nation's leader in rushing yards. Jamal Haynes over at Georgia Tech has been a really, really good back for them. Obviously, we know how good Audric Estime is. He torched us, in that first half, and he torched us all game last year. So I think that's one of the things that's different about this matchup. This is no slight to Mario Anderson. I just don't. When I watch him, he's a nice back. He's come through for them when they needed it. They were severely lacking depth at running back. You transfer from Newberry, and he's a solid player. But he doesn't scare me like an Amari Hampton or an Audric Estime does. He's not going to break off those runs. He's going to go and get tough yardage, but he's not a super dynamic, explosive back. And I think that's when Clemson has played those kind of backs, they've usually done okay. So I do think that's what's different about this matchup, and it's going to make it a little bit different. But maybe he proves me wrong on tomorrow. Hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully not. Hopefully the defense keeps doing what they've been doing. Look, their wide receiver core, their skill position. It's hard for me to say that they're not going to struggle against this Clemson Tiger defense. I mean, this secondary has really been balling out the past few weeks, and I know we've been playing a lot of young guys, and they've really stepped up. They've gotten the job done. They had to come in due to injury, but the drop off was literally none. The play continued. Avian Terrell has been a breath of fresh air in the secondary. That dude is a baller. He's a freshman. I cannot wait to see what he looks like throughout his Clemson career. It's almost like having AJ Terrell over there all over again. He looks just like his brother. He acts just like his brother on the field. Same type of build and thing. And then Nate Wiggins obviously has been balling out all season. He's done really well. Xavier Legette, he's a guy that's going to have his hands full with these secondary guys. Nate Wiggins he obviously loves to be lined up against the best wide receiver that the other team has. He looks forward to that matchup. I think he's going to do well. So speaking from that perspective, both our defense and South Carolina's offense, Jordan, what do you, if you were South Carolina, what would be your plan of attack for this Clemson defense? Because it doesn't seem that there's a clear path to consistent yards in this game for them. If Clemson comes in with their defense and plays the type of game that they're capable of playing.
Yeah, I think first and foremost you have to protect. If I'm Dowell Loggins, my first priority is making sure that Spencer Rattler stays clean, and that's easier said than done. But I think they did some things last year. Obviously, he was not the offensive coordinator last year, but I thought they did some good things last year to kind of give Spencer Rattler time, whether it was rollouts, whether it was play action with Max Protect, to give time for his skill position players to get open downfield. Obviously, this Clemson secondary is a lot better than it was last year, like by every statistical measure. Like Clemson was 77th in the country last year in explosive pass plays allowed. This year, I believe they're 8th.
8th, yes.
So the secondary obviously has played a lot better, and they don't give up the big plays. But I think you have to create them, because I don't think this South Carolina offense is built to just whittle Clemson down and dink and dunk here or there. So I do think finding a way to create explosive plays and get the ball to your playmakers like Xavier Legette, you have to be able to do it. I mean, he's a really good receiver, obviously the secondary has been really, really good, but he's still a really good receiver. He's going to win his fair share of matchups. So, but as long as you don't let that burn you like you did with Juice Wells last year, you should be okay. But that's going to be the toughest part. And also one thing I would do is, when I'm not, throwing the ball downfield, I have to put my playmakers in positions in space to try and make plays. Because one thing I do think this Clemson secondary has been iffy at times especially at corner, is tackling in space. I don't think this is an overly physical group in run support. Or not just run support, but coming downhill and making a tackle at time. I think some of the young guys have shown some flashes, but it hasn't been consistent throughout the season. So I would try to get the ball to some of my speedier guys and see if and just test and see if this Clemson defense is willing to tackle, because that'll make things. I think it'll open some things up for them too, but it's a really tough challenge. All of that is easier said than done, but that's if I'm on the South Carolina side of things, that's where I think I would try and attack this Clemson defense.
Yeah, man. Look, like I said earlier in the show, this South Carolina, offensive players, coaches, everyone, all of the above, they got their work cut out for them against this Clemson defense. And one, because of injuries, two, because of just personnel issues that they've struggled with all season. They're documented. They're out there. Everybody knows them. And three, really, this Clemson defense got kind of carved up last year by Spencer Rattler. And I think the secondary is probably going to take that a little personal. There's going to be a little added motivation, if you will. I saw Alexander Adam, excuse me, comment here and said Xavier Legette said in an interview this week that he doesn't know who Nate Wiggins is.
I don't think he actually said that.
He
didn't say. I think he's referring. I think I know what Adam's referring to. I think there was a tweet that someone made. I think I saw it on Twitter. Someone made like a Xavier Legette edit, and someone quote tweeted it and said Xavier Legette doesn't even know who Nate Wiggins is, because there's been a lot of back and forth, obviously, between the fan bases, about that matchup. And man, Xavier Legette is 6'3", 227. Nate Wiggins has no chance. Nate or Xavier Legette is, he's or Clemson secondary is going to lock him up. Typical trash talk. And so I think somebody said I don't think he actually said that.
Well, whether he said it or not, I guarantee he knows who Nate Wiggins is. If he doesn't, he's going to know who he is by the end of by the end of Saturday night. I could guarantee you that. But I love the trash talk, and it's only amplified during rivalry week, right? So I just thought that was a pretty funny comment to highlight. But this Clemson secondary, I think they're going to take it a little personal this week. One, because it's South Carolina. Two, because of just how poorly they played last year. I mean, it was really bad last year. The secondary got absolutely carved up by Spencer Rattler. The defense they're going to have to get pressure on Rattler. They're going to have to bottle up the run, and then just leave those cornerbacks out there, and see if South Carolina can beat you that way. But your perspective from Clemson's defense, do you think there'll be any extra juice because of how last year went, or you don't really see that? What do you see with this matchup?
I think they have it in mind. I mean, you can't. How can there's a lot of guys on this defense that were on this team last year and remember what happened. It's especially the secondary guys. Between. Nate Wiggins, Andrew Makuba, Sheridan Jones, like those guys remember. So I think it's going to be important, and they're going to have that in mind, and they're going to have a chip on their shoulder. I think it's I think when I watched South Carolina play Tennessee, earlier in the year, I felt like they played with a chip on their shoulder because of what happened last year. You can't not. It's not something you ignore, and it's something that I think is sticking in the back of their mind, and something they want to. They kind of want to go out and prove themselves, and I think even more importantly, we're talking about the players, but I think the staff, the defensive staff. Wes Goodwin. I think there were a lot of things in that game that he wishes he could have had back. A lot of plays, a lot of decisions, play calls that he wishes he could have had back in that game. And I think it's something he remembers as well. And so I really think that, the defense as a whole between the staff and the players, are going to come into this game with some fire, and want to go out and kind of, shut them up, because, they remember what happened last year too.
Yeah, look, absolutely, and I completely agree with you. One of the other things that I think cannot be ignored is the 39 sacks given up by this South Carolina offensive line. That's a ton of sacks, man. That's a lot of sacks.
Not good.
So to me, that's ringing the dinner bell for this Clemson defensive front. I really hope they get after him, make Spencer Rattler super uncomfortable early in the game, get him rattled, no pun intended there, and force him into mistakes, force him into hero ball. That's if you're Clemson's defense, that's what you want to do. You want to force Spencer Rattler into hero ball. You want to shut down the run, and you want to come after Rattler and force him to beat you with his arm and play hero ball. They're going to come after you, run around the backfield, see if you can make enough plays to win the game. I think that's a recipe that will end up in Clemson's favor, should they be able to do it. But like you said before, all of that on both sides is a lot easier said than done. There's plays that are going to be made on both sides of the ball. But let's transition to the South Carolina defense versus the Clemson offense for a little bit. Let's talk about this Clemson offense first, and then we'll kind of transition and talk about the South Carolina defense. Clemson offense comes in riding a little bit higher, a little bit more consistency over the past 2 to 3 weeks. Phil Maffa and Will Shipley, it feels like the coaching staff has started to figure out how to use these two on the same field at the same time, and make sense from a touches standpoint, just a flow of the game standpoint. I think they've done a pretty good job in the last 2 or 3 weeks of kind of doing that. And I think that was all forced, somewhat by the Will Shipley injury that happened that forced Maffa to be the starter. And, ever since then, it feels like there's a much better balance with utilization of those two guys. And it really makes the offense a lot better. Cade Klubnik has started to play a little bit better. He's grown this season, obviously, but we are a little banged up at the skill position. I don't think we'll have Bo Collins for this game, although he may play. Antonio Williams probably not playing for this game as well.
Bo is not playing in this game.
Bo is not playing. Okay. Yeah. He's been ruled out. Okay. I didn't think he was playing, but I hadn't read anything that was definitive about him yet. But, look, Clemson's coming in with some of their own injuries here on the offensive side of the ball and skill position. Everybody knows kind of some of the issues that we've had at points in times this season along the offensive line, kind of musical chairs. You never who's going to show up week to week, who's going to play well. One group of linemen will play extremely well one week. They'll start the very next week, and suddenly they look like they don't know what they're doing. And the coaching staff is back to kind of rolling people in to see what works. And that's kind of been the story of the Clemson offensive line the second half of the season. Some of that due to injury, some of that due to guys just being inconsistent up there. So what are your feelings on this Clemson defense, matching up against this USC defense? How do you think they match up? What do you think it's going to look like? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you pretty much hit on everything. I do think this offense is starting to find its groove. I do think one of the things that's a little troubling if you're a Clemson fan is, yes, while they've played better, all the last 3 weeks, they were all at home. And I think that's kind of the thing that is going to decide this game is how does this team respond, because Clemson has not been a very good road team this year. And, they say defense travels, but will the offense? That's the thing. And again, this South Carolina defense has not been very good. I believe they're 96th in the country in total defense. They've gotten a little bit better against the run. I think they're like 50th instead of, they were one of the worst rushing defenses in the country last year, which made it even more inexplicable why you decided not to run the ball. You gave Will Shipley the ball 3 times in the second half last year. But they've been a pretty awful pass defense, and that's where they've really taken a step back. One of the worst. They haven't been consistent in the secondary. The guys they lost from last year, Cam Smith, guys like that, they haven't. It's hurt them more than I think they expected. And some of the guys they were hoping to rely on, Marcellus Dial, Donald Fortune, like those guys have not really played up to their ability and what people thought they would be going into this year. And I think that makes it a little bit interesting because, this Clemson offense isn't particularly explosive in the passing game. They were able to create some plays in spots last week against North Carolina, but it was a lot of 10, 11 play drives, working down the field. So, I mean, that's what makes this interesting. And you're already down your top 2 receivers. So I think that's the point of this game that I think is going to really decide how Clemson fares in this matchup, because like I said, this Clemson offense has played a lot better, but they're on the road, and Williams-Brice is arguably the toughest environment you played in this year. I'd say they are the toughest environment you've played at this year. NC State is close, but I don't. But capacity wise, South Carolina has them beat, and just the intensity of that crowd with this game, it's a lot different because of the rivalry. So, and obviously the NC State game didn't go very well. So if that tells you anything. Mm-hmm. So it's again that's where I really am interested, because this offense has been okay despite some of the wide receiver, the inconsistency with wide receiver availability. But how does Cade respond? Are you going to turn the ball over? Are the issues that we've seen this year, are they just going to come back and rear its ugly head? Because it doesn't matter what kind of defense you're playing. If you turn the ball over, they're going to take advantage of it. I mean, there's no the quality of your defense, it doesn't really affect your ability to create turnovers if it's just the other team making their own mistakes. So that's the thing about this game that kind of troubles me. But I think going in the game plan, you match up better against their defense than their offense matches up against your defense. So that's but again, that's kind of the hinge point. We've been able to say that about a lot of different matchups this year, and some of those games did not go very well regardless.
Yeah, look, absolutely. This offense does match up much better against the South Carolina defense than on the other side of the ball, right? But with that said, that's one of the things that scared me as well. Frankly, Jordan, we're finally +1 in the turnover differential for the season. South Carolina is +5. So we've barely made it back to the positive side of the turnover differential. And that's really where this game, that is what to me, that is what South Carolina will need to win this game. They're going to need Clemson to shoot themselves in the foot. They're going to need us to make, poor decisions, be loose with the football, and give them opportunities in plus territory. And newsflash is, if anybody's watched Clemson this season, we are very capable of doing all of those things in order to help South Carolina stay in and win this game. So they're not out of the realm of possibility. I understand we're riding high, coming off of a 3-game winning streak. It feels good. It seems like the offense is trending in the right direction. But we need Cade to remember to play within the system. Don't play hero ball. Don't try to do too much. If the play's dead, just throw it away, whatever. Live to play another down. Do not make critical decisions and critical points in the game that are going to swing momentum, because you cannot afford it. Heading into this environment, this is going to be a crazy environment. I don't know if Cade's played in an environment like this quite yet, but that fan base is going to be juiced up, and they're going to stay juiced up until Clemson takes the momentum and starts putting up points against this team, and they feel it slipping away. Then the crowd will quiet. It'll become a much easier environment to play in. But the initial, like that first quarter, if Clemson's the offense is going to be tested. Cade's going to be tested. This fan base, that stadium, it's going to be a crazy environment. It's going to be loud. We know all of those things. So that, to me, that's worrisome because of the inexplicable turnovers and just poor decision making with the football, being loose with the football, the fumbles, all of that stuff could definitely rear its ugly head in this game, and it would be catastrophic, because if you allow them to get momentum in this game with the home field advantage, it's going to be very difficult to recover from. So look, turnovers are going to be a key to this game. And I know that's kind of a cliche thing when you're talking about football. Obviously, turnovers are always a key to every game. But this is a Clemson team that has yet to have a turnover-free game this season. I would love to see it come in the last game against South Carolina. We almost made it happen last week, but we had a fumble. So if we could make that happen this week against the South Carolina Gamecocks, I think our offense could absolutely get that done, and it would be very favorable for the Tigers, and it would definitely be a win for the Tigers. If we win the turnover margin, I have no doubts that we win this game. But the question is, will we do that? And we need some of the guys on the outside to step up. Tyler Brown's got to step up. I'd like to see Adam Randall, continue to, get some catches in there. He's made a few contested catches here as of late. I'd like to see him continue to do that kind of stuff, continue to gain momentum. He's starting to look a little bit more comfortable on the field, which I think is a good thing. We all see what Troy Stelato's been doing. The dude's an animal. It seems like he takes a vicious hit every single game, gets kind of banged up, comes right back in, continues to catch the ball. He's just he's a tough dude. You can tell out there on the field, there's not much that's going to keep him out of the game. So those skill guys really got to step up. They gotta help Cade out. They got to make Cade right. The offensive line, they got to protect. South Carolina has been getting a little bit more pressure on the quarterback over the last couple weeks. So the last thing I want to see is our offensive line start to crumble, Cade start getting pressure, start making poor decisions with the football. So the offensive line's really got to come out and play strong for us. I feel good about the offense's chances, but at the same time, this is a rivalry game. This is a hostile environment. We do have a young quarterback still that is still growing and learning. And we do have a team that has been bitten and infected by the turnover bug the entire season. So will we see a turnover-free game? I don't know, man. I don't know.
I don't know. I personally, I wouldn't bet on it, obviously, since we haven't had one yet. But this would be a great time to do it. But again, I do think you have, your ability to be more balanced in South Carolina is what I think will be able to allow you to get some, get some separation in this game. But that's the thing it hinges on. I think they are okay on the defensive line. Linebackers, I think they're really good. Their linebackers have been good downhill, but really poor in coverage a lot of the year. They've kind of been picked on there. And I think you have, despite not having Antonio Williams, despite not having Bo Collins, I think you have enough playmakers to kind of force them to make plays. Whether it's getting the ball out to Will Shipley in space. He's made linebackers miss quite a bit over the past few weeks. Whatever, you just get creative, find ways to get him the ball. I mean, I don't think it's a overly complicated game plan to get this ball moving. I think there will be opportunities. It's just about, making sure your quarterback is settled in, not playing within the system, and giving him as much help as possible, and that means running the football. This team needs to be able to run the football.
Run the ball, man. Run it early.
Run the ball.
Run the ball, Paul. Run it early. Run it often, man. You got two studs back there, running back. They're both feeling comfortable. They're both, putting up really good numbers the past couple weeks, man. Just lean on them. Lean on them.
Yep. And I think that is a good recipe for success. And yeah, that's really the long and short of it. I think Clemson is the better team in this matchup, but it's about, are you going to do what you've done a lot of this year, and are you going to make things more difficult than they have to, like you did in this matchup last year? And that's all it is. I mean, if you can play a relatively clean game and not shoot yourself in the foot, I think Clemson's talent will win over in the end, and that should be enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Clemson is obviously the more talented team. They're the team that should win this game, but more talented and should win is not always the team that wins. Obviously, we all know this. We're college football fans. We watch college football every Saturday, and we know that to be the case. And then add the extra juice of a rivalry game, and literally anything could happen. But Clemson has to win this game. And talking about it from, a fan's perspective, all the cachet that they've built up, both in the coaching staff over the past 3 weeks, with some of the improvement that we've seen watching the Tigers, will quickly evaporate if you lose this game to South Carolina. Best believe that will happen quick, fast, and in a hurry. But they know that. Dabo knows that. I'm sure the rest of the coaching staff knows that. So let's talk a little special teams. Clemson special teams is kind of hit and miss, right? I've seen a couple people in the comment section already mention the 2 straight weeks of fake punts that have not gone too terribly well for the Tigers, that have kind of been weird play calls, in my opinion. If it's 4th and 1, I just assume you line up, put Moffa in the backfield, and if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. But that's just me. Talking about the field goal kicking, obviously everybody knows Clemson's field goal woes on the season. Jonathan Weiss has done the best he can, but we are 50% on field goals so far this season. Not a great percentage. I think the longest one so far is 41 yards. South Carolina, much, much better in that department. They're 85, 86%, something like that. And their longest is 50 plus, I think. So obviously they have us in the field goal kicking department. But punting is honestly, I looked up the stats for punting because Aiden Swanson's been doing a killer job this season. Been super proud of him. I gave him a lot of flack last season, but he's done a super job this season. He's been so consistent. You just know what you're going to get when he trots out on the field. We have a bad kid here or there, but they are way few and further between than they were last season.
Oh yeah,
where he was just, it was surprising if he hit a good one last season. But this season's been way more consistent. Shout out to him. He is coming back next year. Dabo put that out in a press conference not too long ago. So that's a good thing. Punting is locked up for next season. But I was surprised to see that they are dead even on average punts or average yards per punt.
Yep.
And pretty much dead even in every statistical category when it comes to punting, which I thought was pretty interesting. But that's kind of the special team side of things. Clemson, obviously, you've seen it in the past 3 weeks. They've gotten far more aggressive going forward on 4th downs, more than I've ever seen in Dabo Swinney's coaching career at Clemson. And I think that has a lot to do with the field goal kicking. I think that has a lot to do with how much they trust the defense and their ability to bow up when they absolutely need to. So what are your thoughts on special teams? Is there an edge either way towards the Tigers, towards the Gamecocks? What's your thoughts on special teams heading into this one?
Yeah. Honestly, when I look at this matchup, we know special teams played a huge role last year, and obviously in a negative sense for Clemson, really negative sense for Clemson. And obviously we think about the special the fumble at the end, the trick play on the return game, but Clemson didn't win the field position battle either. It felt like a lot of their drives were within their own 20. They were getting pinned back. South Carolina was doing a better job of getting those punts off and forcing longer fields. This year, I think you're in a much better situation. And Clemson has flat out won games due to field position and creating short fields in the special teams game this year.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Notre Dame game, especially that set, from the middle of that third quarter to the end of the game, it was a punt fest, but you kept pinning them back, and they weren't able to get anything going. It never crossed the 50. Yep. I think that's a really good sign, and I think that's a telling of the improvement that the Clemson special teams has made in that regard. And I think for South Carolina, I mean, you mentioned it. Kai Kroger, arguably should have won the Ray Guy Award last year. He hasn't had quite that kind of season when you look at the numbers, and he's had some games where he hasn't punted particularly well. I don't know what happened, what changed, but he's not the superstar punter that it was. Oh my God, every single punt was, he was placing it perfectly, going out at the 1, going out at the 3, and just perfectly executed. I think the South Carolina special teams as a whole has taken a step back from last year. And I think obviously that's in your favor. And so I would, with Clemson's field goal kicking woes, it makes it hard to say that Clemson is better special teams wise than South Carolina, but I think it's about even. And I think that's where given the special teams play we've seen in recent years, I mean, that you'll take that.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, special teams is definitely an underrated part of this game because it meant so much in deciding the winner and the loser last season, along with the turnovers, which we've already talked about. So, Clemson's going to have to bring their A game, play field position at times. We're still working with an offense that is, frankly, just a work in progress still. They're still, learning. They're still growing. We don't have, the explosive kind of plays happening. So they're very methodical drives. So a lot of things going on in this game. I think the Tigers, will ultimately come out on top. We'll get into score prediction and all of that stuff in a few moments. But any other thoughts on the matchup between the Gamecocks and the Tigers before we get into over-unders, score predictions, and our comments section?
Yeah. I think I already hit on it, but I just wanted to emphasize this game is really just about doing the little things right. I mean, when in these types of rivalry games, it really does come down to the really basic football at the end of the day. It's maybe you really we can talk about, oh man, they're going to bring something extra, bring something different for this game and all that, but really the results of these games come down to who plays more sound football.
That's it.
And that's where what we need to see from Clemson. If you play a sound football game, it sounds really obvious, but it's whether it's just executing your play, not turning the ball over, not making any catastrophic whiffs, playing within your assignment, understanding your assignment, understanding your teammates' assignments and how you fit within the system, all of that. Just playing with sound fundamentals. That is what makes a difference in these types of rivalry games.
Absolutely.
And so Clemson, you have to be the more fundamentally sound football team. And if you do that, I think you win this game without doing anything super unique or different or special. You need to just play a sound football game. If we see that, I think that's all you really need. And again, unfortunately, we haven't seen a lot of that this year. But we need to see it more than. We need to see it. It would be nice to really get that in this game of all games to finally get it. So that's going to be the difference, and that's going to be what hinges, whether Clemson, wins this game and maybe possibly wins even more comfortably than you might think, or it's a dogfight and you're in danger of losing for a second straight year, and the implications of that we can talk about later. But that would not be very good for obviously.
No, it would certainly not be good for this coaching staff. The fan base would be in uproar for sure. But I mean, to your point, like you said, man, there's no groundbreaking stuff that we're going to say here, on the show that's going to be like, oh, this is how Clemson gets it done, or this is how South Carolina gets it done. It really does, like you say, it just comes down to the fundamentals, man. Can Clemson take care of the ball? I think the defense is going to feast. I really do. I think the defense is going to come out and feast in this game. The offense just needs to help them a little bit. Just help them a little bit. Cade, play within the system. No hero ball. If the play's not there, throw it away. Throw it away. Do not put the ball into harm's way, especially in plus territory. You just can't do it. You can't do it. Don't put the defense in poor situations where their back's up against the wall and they have to step up and do those things. So, it's really going to be the little things, man. But we'll see who gets the job done this Saturday. Again, that game is going to be 7:30 p.m. this Saturday on the SEC Network. The over/under for this game is 49.5 right now. And Clemson is a 7-point favorite, 7.5 point favorite, excuse me. So that's not surprising, I don't think. That number seems about right to me, as far as Clemson being a 7.5 point favorite. The over/under, I think, is fine as well. It seems about right to me. What do you think about the point spread and the over/under for this game?
Yeah, I think it. I think it makes sense. It's that hook is begging. I feel like that hook is begging people to take South Carolina in this game. And I do think it's like 55-45 in favor of South Carolina as far as the spread is concerned. Right. So it makes a lot of sense. But I think this is about right. I don't think Clemson's offense is going to be equipped in this game to just score like in bunches. I know the South Carolina defense isn't particularly good, but the environment and everything and just this offense has not shown the ability to travel that well. I can't see them getting to like the high 30s, 40s, something like that. And this over under and this spread implies a like a 28-21, 29-21 type of final score. Mm-hmm. And that honestly that feels right.
Checks out.
I think that feels right. I think South Carolina will, they're going to create some play because, Spencer Rattler is really good. He's going to make a few wow throws. They're going to be able to put a drive or two together. But it's not going to be consistent enough. And I think Clemson's going to be the one with the more consistent offense throughout the entire game. So, I think this makes sense. I think some people were, within the fan base were surprised it wasn't more, but I think this makes sense with a rivalry game. South Carolina's playing for bowl eligibility, and Clemson has not been a very good road team. And so all of those things factor in. And it's like it's hard to, favor them by more than into the double digits, because it just
Right.
doesn't feel like this team has done that to these types of teams consistently enough to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, like I said, I saw the line come out. I thought it made a lot of sense. I think it's pretty much right on. It's about right in my opinion. Where I would have it. So, I think I think it's about that time, Jordan, that we transition to our score predictions. The comment section, you guys can start getting your score predictions in there if you guys want. Me and Jordan do not know if any of you guys haven't been on here before. We do not share our score predictions with each other prior to the show. So anything that we say here, we're hearing it real time, just like you guys are. Quick reminder before we get into our score predictions, though, if you have not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. Me and Jordan are here every single week, Thursday, 7 p.m., doing a weekly show for you guys. That will continue through the off season, so don't go anywhere. And then we also do a post-game live video after every Clemson game. So get in there, hit that subscribe button, come hang out with us on a consistent basis. Hit that like button. We really appreciate it. Jordan, score prediction for Clemson versus South Carolina 2023. Will Clemson get back in the win column? Will they get back on top and leave Willie B, Columbia, South Carolina, with a win tomorrow night?
I think they do. I think this is going to be a tight. I don't want to say tight, but I don't think this is a game that Clemson runs away with. I can't feel comfortable enough in this spot. You're coming. You're coming off of 3 straight really high moments. And it's in the betting community, it's like, well, the letdown is coming and all that. And so while I don't think Clemson loses this game, I think South Carolina is gonna hang around, and it depends on what Clemson does, especially they haven't played a clean game this year, and I'm not going to predict them to now, but I think they do enough and they play well enough to get the win. I'm going to go with a little bit more of an out of the box score prediction, because it feels like every single one I do is like, multiples of 7 or something like that, or more common score. I'm going to go a little bit outside the box because this is a rivalry game and this game can get weird. I'm going to go 26-19 in favor of Clemson.
26-19.
Yeah. So I think South Carolina, they slightly cover. But I think Clemson is in control of this game. I think the final score might lead people to believe that, oh man, Clemson is, they're in a dogfight. But I think it's going to be competitive, but I think it's going to be one that Clemson is able to control, whether it's time of possession, like they've done the past couple of weeks, to their opponents, and really just play ball control and run the football and, hit the passing players that are needed and get out of there with a win.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that score prediction, 26-19. Definitely an unusual type of score prediction. I'm going to go a little bit more heavy on the Clemson side. I just think, when I look at the matchup, we talked backstage, but before we came on the show, but we talked about it on the show as well tonight. It makes me uncomfortable because of what Clemson has shown, their ability to turn the ball over and really play, just poor football, poor ball handling. Cade at times wanting to play hero ball and making poor decisions with the football. So that makes me nervous. The offense turning the ball over makes me nervous in this game. And we all know how a turnover 2 can snowball into, you're in an absolute dogfight and you're fighting for your life to claw your way back in and try to win a game, right? But with that said, when I look at it logically, I just can't make a ton of scenarios in my head other than Clemson imploding on the turnover side of things with how South Carolina wins this game. matchup wise, it's a poor matchup for South Carolina's offense and defense. Frankly, it's just not a good matchup. Although the defense will probably fare much better against Clemson's offense, I think South Carolina's defense is going to have a hell of a time trying to manufacture yards against this Clemson defense. It's just not going to be super easy. And with a defense that has been as opportunistic as Clemson's has in the past few weeks with takeaways, I think that could spell disaster for the South Carolina Gamecocks. So I'm going to go 31-17 Tigers. 31-17 Tigers.
I like it.
My original was a little bit worse than that, but I skewed it a little bit after I thought about it earlier today when I was doing some research and looking up some stuff for the show. So 31-17, Tigers on top. Get back in the win column. Silence the crowd in Willie B. Stadium will be half full by the fourth quarter, hopefully, if all goes according to my plan. But we all know that I have no influence over this game whatsoever. So what's everybody saying in the comment section? What's their score prediction? And then we'll turn it over to the comment section and get out of here, man.
Let's do it. Let's see. Jonathan is feeling 28, Clemson 28, South Carolina 17. Okay. Yep, I could totally see that. He says that's assuming no pick sixes on our end. Yeah, and that's a bigger assumption than for most teams.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say the defense gets a pick six in this game.
I would love that. You know, they've had a pick six in 2 of the last 3 games.
Yep.
You know, that could be something. James Thompson. Well, actually, I skipped over. Big Mick. He says he's feeling a dominant Clemson victory. He says lame truck stuck. 44-23. Lamer score late after defensive subs. Now, if that happens, Big Mick, that's gonna feel pretty good.
We're gonna have a good night if that happens. I hope you're right.
We're gonna have a good night regardless if Clemson wins this game. But you know, a blowout, a dominant victory. You know, kind of like the satisfaction I got after 30-0 a couple of years ago was pretty great. So the South Carolina fans went and like they did the revisionist history and they were like, oh man, Jason Brown was our starting quarterback, and our offense wasn't good and Muschamp recruits and all that. But I was like, they forget that leading up to that game, they were, a lot of them were picking to win that game, and just to completely to blank them, they didn't score a point. Defense was dominant. Will Shipley and Kobe Pace just ran all over them. That was a pretty good night, and it was a nice catharsis after the season that season, because that 2021 season was rough, very difficult for a lot of reasons, kind of like this one has.
Yeah.
James Thompson says no letdown. He likes 38-17 Tigers. I like it, James. That'd be great.
I like to see it.
Kevin says, I think both teams are playing for a recruiting event. Yep. I mean, it's like every year, this game has massive recruiting implications. And, Shane Beamer has been propping it up in as far as how he recruits. I mean, you see their recruits on visits taking pictures with the Palmetto Bowl trophy, stuff like that. It's kind of funny because, Clemson recruits are taking pictures with the college football playoff trophies and all that. So it's a little funny, but
hey, look, they don't have any better trophies in the trophy case. Okay. Just let them have it.
Well, you can't forget. Well, don't disrespect the 1969 ACC championship.
Yeah, that was 1969.
Yeah.
So
was that the same year as I think it was the same year as Woodstock. So there you go.
Yeah. Congratulations, South Carolina. Was that their because the trophy changed in 2014, right? So was that's the first portion of it that got a South Carolina logo on it. It was all Tiger Paws before that.
Oh yeah, yep. That's a good point.
Yeah. Dang it, messed the whole trophy up. Oh well.
Yep. Big Mick says Spencer will test the corners. I think he loses that challenge. If the linebackers can cover the crossing routes, Clemson has a field day. I think so. And I think the good thing about this defense is they faced, a good bit of talent at quarterback this year. Between Jordan Travis, Drake May, Sam Hartman, who torched them last year, was held to 140 passing yards. They faced some really good passing offense. Georgia Tech has been a really good passing offense this year. Mm-hmm. Completely, pretty much shut them down. So I think this defense has been tested with teams with, a good quarterback and good receivers. I think the difference is this South Carolina offense does not have much of a complementary run game. I believe they're only averaging 2.5 yards per carry this year. It's not good. I mean, that's not sack adjusted, but that's still not very good, even if you adjust for sacks. So I think that makes it a little bit easier to dial it back and dial up some pressure, get a little bit more aggressive. Because this South Carolina offense has not been a balanced offense, and they really didn't. Even their passing offense can be shut down and has been shut down in multiple games this year, especially against the better defenses they played. They did not throw the ball well against Kentucky. They had they created some big plays late in that game to win it, but they were not on the whole of that game. They did not throw the ball very well. A&M didn't throw it very well. Tennessee didn't throw it very well. Georgia in the second half, they really couldn't get much going. When Spencer Rattler isn't making like these ungodly, NFL type throws, it's tough. It was kind of like what Drake May was last week. I mean, he made that incredible, off his back foot, with pressure in his face throw for their first touchdown, and then really didn't have much else after that.
Absolutely.
And I think it's a similar situation, but without the 1,400-yard rushing running back to complement. I think this is a favorable matchup, but it's, again, you can't get cocky and you can't get confident because, South Carolina's receivers, outside of Xavier Legette, are not bad. So you have to respect them. I think Omega Blake has kind of come on and this year, and some of the younger guys. But obviously, if you can bottle up Legette, you should be all right.
Yep. And I think Clemson will definitely have a really good chance at doing that. I believe in Clemson corners. So they'll get it done. I have no doubts.
Absolutely. James, the empty trophy case. Yeah. And not much to their name as far as accomplishments. I mentioned the 69 ACC championship. Oh, and they also won the SEC East in 2010 when they suffered the worst loss in SEC championship game history.
Oh man, that's okay though, because it's going to be one trophy less in that trophy case come Saturday night.
100%.
The Palmetto Trophy will be coming back to its rightful home in Clemson, South Carolina.
I think so. See anything else? Yeah, Big Mick said, most bookers are taking Carolina to cover the spread. Yeah, I mean, there's reasons to take South Carolina to cover in this game because of the things I mentioned, but And obviously my score prediction predicted them to slightly cover, but I think Clemson could very easily, cover this game. And it's just about, not making, if you play a sound game, I think you do cover. But if you don't, you kind of open the door for them to hang around and make it a chippier and tighter game than maybe you want. Let's see. James says we need our tight ends to step up and start catching the ball. Yeah, I think you've seen that in spots. I mean, I think they, Jake Brenningstool has not been a factor, as big of a factor as we hoped at times. But I think they haven't forgot about him in the red zone. He's gotten opportunities in the red zone, and I think that's good. When they get down the field, they don't forget he exists. He hasn't been as big of a downfield threat, between the 20s, but I think how they're using him is fine. But again, you saw how he played in that Miami game, and you see kind of how he can be used and what a matchup problem he presents, and especially in this game, because of South Carolina's limitations in coverage. I think he would be a really, really tough matchup for them. Ron Duffney, he comes in, he says hi. What's up, Ron?
What's up, Ron? Thanks for stopping by, man. We appreciate you.
Philip says, will Clemson turn the ball over? Does Kellogg have cornflakes?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I like that one.
Last time I checked, Kellogg does have cornflakes. So
indeed, they do.
I think that answers our question, doesn't it? Does it?
That does not bode well.
No, no. Like I said, 0 games this season without a turnover. So
yeah,
but it would be sweet to have the one game this season that we don't turn the ball over against South Carolina. I would.
That'd be great. And you've turned the ball over in the previous 2 matchups too. So. Last year we don't even need to talk about, and then even in 2021, I think DJ threw a pick.
I'm sure he did.
So it would be great to it would be like a nice punctuation exclamation point on the end of this season and kind of show some growth in that department. But I can't predict it to happen because we just haven't seen. This team has a what are you doing turnover in them every week, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean you don't know. It's almost at this point it's not a matter of if, it's just when. At what point in the game is it going to happen, and how much damage is it going to cause? That's kind of where we're at this season as far as turnovers go. The difference is we're doing it a little less often. As the season comes to a close, and the defense is starting to produce some of their own turnovers the other way. So, you see what can happen when those things start going your way. Clemson's got a little bit more favorable situations on the bounce of ball plays as of late, which was not the case early in the season. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong, basically in the first part of the season.
Yep. I saw a stat. I don't think I saved it, and I'm probably going to butcher it or misquote it. But Clemson under Dabo has not lost to a team with a losing record at the time it was played. Probably shouldn't have. I probably shouldn't have said that out loud. So I'm gonna knock on wood real quick.
Yeah.
But that's a streak on the line here. South Carolina's 5-6. They've lost to teams that finish with losing records. Obviously,
right.
Syracuse comes to mind back in 2017, but they haven't lost to a team that had a losing record at the time the game was played. So
yeah, I have a stat actually that I wrote down because I ran across it earlier today, and it's sort of interesting. and it goes along with what you're saying. South Carolina has not upset Clemson since 1992 when entering the game below 500. So they have not beat Clemson since the 1992 season when they entered the game below 500. So, but again,
A lot of streaks on the line.
A lot of streaks on the line, just like last season, and that didn't end too well for the Tigers. So
no, it did not. No, it did not.
You know, you can talk streaks, and they're fun. Stats are fun to talk about, and especially aid you in trash talking ability. But in the grand scheme of things, when the ball's kicked off, they won't matter.
This would also break a trend of the streakiness that has been this rivalry as of late. You know, obviously Clemson had won 7 in a row, but before that, South Carolina had won 5 in a row, and then before that, I think Clemson won 3 in a row. They won in 08.
Yeah, it was something like, I think it was 3 in a row.
Yeah. And then I think South Carolina won. Oh man, who won? Clemson won in 08. They lost. No, they won in 07 too, I believe. But I'll have to go look it up. I always get the years mixed up. But so yeah, I mean, this rivalry has been pretty streaky as of late. So this would break a trend of once a team kind of breaks the other team's streak, they kind of go on a streak of their own. Let's kind of, this would be a great time to break that trend and kind of get back up in this series.
Yeah, let's get rid of that for sure. Yeah, so we had 7 coming in. Before that, South Carolina had 5. Then we were on a 2-game winning streak before the 5-game winning streak.
I knew they had won in 07 and 08, but I could not remember. No, they lost in 06 because that was the
we lost 31-28 in 06. Before that 06 loss, we had a 4-game winning streak.
Yep. Those were the Charlie Whitehurst years.
So really going back to like the 80s, Clemson goes on these like 2, 3, 4-game winning streaks, and then they drop a game. And then they go back on a winning streak. Obviously up until that 5-game winning streak was, of the modern era, that was probably, the worst one that Clemson's suffered at the hands of the Gamecocks. So that's kind of the trend that's been happening is, and then it looks like early to mid 90s, we were just trading year for year. We would win, they would win, we would win, they would win.
Yeah, the 90s were not a great time for both programs.
Yeah.
No, they had some good teams. South Carolina had a couple of good teams. They love to hate on Brad Scott, but he won them their first bowl game. So
it's true.
Give him credit for that. And obviously he ended up at Clemson after that. All right. Anything else before we get on out of here?
No, I think that'll do it, man. Rivalry week. Pre-game show is in the books. That's our preview. That's our score prediction. Jordan had a 26-19 Clemson on top. I had a 31-17 Clemson on top. A bunch of you in the comment section had much larger margins of victory. I hope you guys are correct, and me and Jordan are not, because I would love to see a blowout in this game. I don't ever want it to be close. I don't care about watching an entertaining game when it comes to this one.
A blowout itself is entertaining enough.
It's very entertaining if you're a Clemson fan. If you're an outsider, outsider looking in, obviously those aren't entertaining games. Every game I'm watching that, Clemson's not playing in, I want it to be, a competitive game, obviously, because they're more fun to watch. But when your team's playing, you want it to be a blowout, and hopefully the Tigers can get it done. I think they will this Saturday, 7:30 in Willie Bryce Stadium. So we'll see how it goes, Jordan. But make no mistake about it, regardless of what happens on the field, me and Jordan will be right here doing a post-game live reaction for you guys, breaking down everything we saw in the game, the good, the bad, and hopefully the blowout. But until then, guys, I'm Tiger Paul Craven. He's Jordan Bowman. We'll see you tomorrow, probably around 11:30. We'll see how long the game goes. But until then, guys, go Tigers. And I hope the Gamecocks lose by 30.
Same.